Did you ever think that the CEO of your company that people tell you is so great, maybe not that great at all? And then you have to ask yourself, why would you work that hard for that person? Hello, my name is Michael Denisoff. I've dedicated my entire professional life to helping companies perform better and have better cultures. I've done this as an executive as well as a consultant and executive coach. On today's program, we look at why are there so many bad CEOs, or are they really that bad? And this is important to you because you really should want to know who you're working for, how to become a CEO, and if you ever become a CEO, how to be a good CEO. Fair enough? So let's check this out. So first on the list, we have to say, are all CEOs bad? No, some are. Some I wouldn't even have them balance my checkbook, to be honest with you. Okay? Are they all bad people? No, some are. Okay? And you'll hear why in a moment. I was a CEO myself, and it's a tough gig, and it takes broad shoulders to do it. So it's not an easy job. But as a CEO, if we want to kind of follow the ideas of servant leadership and serving your company, very few CEOs do that. And we need to talk about why and how they get there. So let's talk about why there's so many bad CEOs. So the best person is now not always chosen for that role. Why? One, they're connected, or there's cronyism, right? So they're in the club, they know each other, they have friends in high places. It happens all the time. Not that long ago, I was working for a prestigious hospital chain, and I knew the CEO, and quite frankly, he was pretty unimpressive. And so when I finally get to know his leadership team, of which half of them didn't talk to each other, and I said to him one time, it's not so much that half your leadership team or executive team doesn't talk to each other, it's that you're okay with it. And so I asked his team one day when he wasn't in, I said, how did this fella get this job? How did he become CEO? And the response was, he comes from a very prominent family, which I didn't know what that meant. And I certainly didn't think that made him a great CEO because he came from a prominent family. But that happens all the time. Next up, sometimes you get CEOs who are just easy to control. You have just boards that want to control their CEO and tell them what to do and kind of do their bidding. And so there's more than willing people who will take the CEO title and the pay and do whatever they're told, regardless of how that feels about their internal system. Next up is sometimes it's just good timing. Sometimes people are around in the right time at the right place. Doesn't mean they're very good. Sometimes that's all the company has to turn to. They have to move fast, or their situation, the company, where they don't want to be without the CEO. So that happens all the time. What else happens? Sometimes it's just a bad choice. There's a company I worked for years ago, and they had this gentleman. He was a great marketing CMO, marketing leader. It was fantastic. So they rewarded him by making him the CEO of the company. Well, he wasn't a great CEO. He was a great marketing person, but not a great CEO. And all his goodness kind of went away, and all his badness kind of went downhill because he was not a good CEO. Other things for CEO. Sometimes companies just hire for pedigree. Sometimes you have to have the right school name, which we know isn't like it used to be 20 years ago. Certainly at a lot of the fancier schools, a lot of people, who are legacy students or who get in because, again, they're well connected. And so you have a lot of CEOs who really, really aren't that great. And and so that's what happens with that. Sometimes they're just not chosen. Next up, let's talk about, what happens, right? What happens though? Maybe there's somebody who comes up the ranks who isn't well connected, who doesn't have the pedigree, but they're really great leaders. This is a common scenario. Okay, so let's talk Becky. Becky comes up. She's a manager. She's noticed. She's high potential. She's promoted, senior manager. Really like Becky. Why do we like Becky? She's bold and proactive, not afraid to rock the boat. All right, then this happens. Great. So what do? Put her in a director role, then a senior director role. Really high on this person. This is a great person, loved by everybody, a strong leader. And then what happens? Well, Becky finally makes it to, let's say, the SVP role. Well, that's a whole different life change, right? You're also making more money than she ever thought she could. There is deferred compensation. Maybe her kids are going to school as paid by the company. There's a car allowance involved. All of a sudden, all the great things that made Becky great turn into, I can't lose this, right? And that's what happens to a lot of executives and a lot of CEOs. They kind of get to this certain level and it becomes about preservation and protectionism. So no longer are they trying to lead a company or do great things. They're trying not to lose what they have, right? And that happens all the time. There's myriad excuses like this. And in some ways, I don't blame them. I don't think it's good, but I don't blame them. When you have that, you're in that inner circle, you don't want to lose it. So all of a sudden you kind of start cutting corners or you do things maybe you wouldn't do, or you're not as bold. You're definitely not rocking the boat for sure. So I think that happens. And unfortunately too, for some CEOs and some executives, it becomes a matter of the other two P's. So we have protectionism, right? And preservation. Then it turns into power and prestige. It's fun to be a CEO because you know what? People kind of listen to you a lot. They show a lot of respect you really don't deserve. And you know how you made it in business is when you tell a bad joke and everybody laughs because they kind of have to. So most CEOs aren't half as funny as they think they are. So these are big things to give up. Once you get the taste of it, it's kind of like flying first class. You really don't want to go back to coach. So once you become an executive or CEO, you don't want to go back and you'll do everything you can in your power to keep it. So I think that's a huge driver. You'll hear me talk about that through all the future episodes about that. Other reasons why there's such a dearth of really good executives. Some companies, quite frankly, reward people who can maneuver in business. So we sometimes call that kissing up and kicking down, right? So they're really good at brown-nosing up and keeping everybody else in fear doing their bidding. And the company, just kind of likes it. They're probably pretty effective to some degree. And yeah, I mean, that's not a great leader though. And somebody who does this, they really don't really get good at skills, leadership skills. So when they make it to the top, they're probably not very good, but they're already there. It's kind of like what happens in the NBA. There's so many NBA coaches that have losing records but get hired again because they have head coaching experience. Well, just because they have head coaching experience doesn't mean they're very good at what they do, okay? All right, this next category for bad CEOs and executives have to do with ones that are really excellent at, and it goes beyond playing the game, it's playing people. So they're really good, adept at NLP, which is neuro-linguistical programming, manipulating people, knowing how to look for people's weaknesses and take advantage of that. And they really get good at the power game, the pure power game. So they're not about empowerment. They're about power games. These are and I've seen this many times, the CEOs or the executives who have a bigger chair, a higher chair than you when you go into the office, or their coffee mug is huge and you have a little teacup. They know exactly what they're doing. It's not by mistake. This is how they kind of keep you on your toes. They manipulate you. They go after you. They put fear in you. And some folks are really good at it. Matter of fact, there was one gentleman I was working with as a consultant. He was so good, and his body language was so good. He just knew how to connect his thoughts with his body to really intimidate some of the toughest people. Just knew how to do that well. And some of these people are really good at, not taking accountability. They're just really good at it. So I remember one time at this one place, the CEO had told the HR director to do away with this benefit. And it was a kind of an older benefit, wanted to do away with it. She said, no, people count on that. I know it's old, but people want it. She made her do it and cut the benefit. There was a big outcry in the company. And then they had a big company town meeting. And it was really great because the town meeting came up. It was about this. And what I saw was this. The CEO came out and the head of HR came out. And as the questions came, the CEO faded back and sat down and let the HR take all the heat. Eventually, he changed his mind and saved the day. He was a big hero, and this person pretty much had to resign of embarrassment. So they're really good at manipulating and playing the game. So there's a good number of people like that. Also, we've talked about some people are just well-connected. Like I said, we talked about the person who came from a prominent family. That was a big deal. Sometimes it's, you go to grad schools and you're with your buddies and you kind of just take care of each other. Again, you're in that inner circle. That happens all the time. Sometimes, again, it's not nefarious. It's like, if I'm at a country club and and my friend's at a country club, I might say, hey, my daughter's coming up for internship. Can she work at your company? Yes, of course. But my son's coming up. I'll work at your company. And all of a sudden we have this kind of very insulated group of people who are coming up in the ranks who maybe not be the best, but again, are within the system. They're good. It's kind of inbred. It's kind of interesting for sure. And then some executives are just really good at playing the game. So they're kind of amoral. They'll kind of do whatever they have to do to get promoted. So, they kind of just, I heard this one person said, she was a terrible, terrible VP in this company. She said, I'm a chameleon. I'll do whatever they want me to do and be who they want me to be. Not I'll flex with the situation and bring to it what it needs, but I'll kind of just be what they want to be. So low integrity. But again, moving the system, working people. And then a lot of these folks too, and I think to some degree, a lot of executives experience this. There's a lot of temptations ethically there. And so although I would say a lot of executives don't necessarily do unethical things, although many do, a lot of the folks up there, they look away. Their big sin is looking away at the unethical things because, again, they don't want to rock the boat and lose what they have. And what has happened with all of these things working together, there's this level of less accountability of the CEO in particular, right? So if a CEO comes with a great strategy and great plan and it doesn't work, the CEO rarely gets fired. It's usually how a bunch of people are let go in a riff, which makes no sense. His or her idea, his or her plan doesn't work, and a whole bunch of people in lower ranks get let go. That's kind of weird to me. In general, too, no company wants to fire their CEO. It just looks bad. It's bad press. No company really wants to do it, so there's a level of protection there. And a lot of the times, these different CEOs, they sit on each other's boards. So there's a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you know what I mean. And that's just particularly a huge issue when it comes to executive compensation, which we'll take on at a later time. But executive compensation is out of control. But I'm going to take care of you on your board, and you're going to take care of me when I'm on my board. It just works that way. Again, is it all nefarious? No, but it has happened. All right. Also, there's a number of CEOs who've had momentary successes, right? They've done something good, they have the halo effect, and they're put into a CEO role, and they fail miserably. And we've seen a lot of this last few years because you kind of want that new, fresh, CEO, and they do terrible. And we see this, by the way, in the ranks of college football coaches. They want the cool thing now is the young coaches. A lot of them are promoted because they were doing some good things, and now they have a huge program, and they fail. And they have that halo effect. One gentleman, I'll never forget, at a retail company that I worked in, he just didn't know the business was not very good. And when you talked to him about the business, it was clear he was using his 1990s playbook that worked in the 1990s that he was riding all through the 2010s, and it wasn't working. And he clearly had issues with the company, but it was always something. It was always product, it was the economy, it was the sunshine. Clearly a problem. So a lot of times you get CEOs who have a moment of success, and somebody thinks it's going to translate to everything. And then sometimes, like I said earlier, you're just in the right time at the right place. It just happens a lot. And then, in a very real way, we see this too. A lot of times in companies, because they're moving so fast, you got somebody, let's say, two directors. One director's doing really well, the other director's not so well, and you have an open spot. Often, the director or senior director who's not doing very well gets promoted to VP. Why? Because this is working here. Why would we want to mess this up? So let's take the incompetent one and promote them above. And I'm sure many times you've seen the wrong person get promoted in a company. You'll see a slate of 3 characters. Like, that's good. That person's good too. That person's really weak. And the weak person gets it. Happens all the time. And then, of course, this goes back to the accountability piece, which I want to stress is a lot of times CEOs, they believe they are above reproach. They think they have their own rules. And a lot of times they do. They do have a lot of perks people don't know about. They have a lot of resources people don't know about. And so they kind of bought into this last 20 years about the Rockstar CEO ethic. So they think they're kind of mini gods. You know, a lot of these CEOs, they think they're Steve Jobs when they're on the stage, and they're not even close. But they're playing this role. They're playing it up. They're above things, and they think they become untouchable. You know, they think they're above it. They think they're the most important ones, and they're way more special than any of the workers. And here's two great examples of that before we get to solutions. Okay, working for a pharmaceutical company. Executive vice president had an affair with their assistant, embezzles, I don't know, $4 million. So what does the company do? It mandates an ethics course for the entire company to take. All right, and I was a position to say for this one operating company, we won't do it. Like, no, you have to do it. Right? We need an ethics course. My response was, these people are great. The everyday person who's working at this company has bought into the mission statement and the values. They're good people. They don't need ethics training. It's clearly the people up above who need the ethics training because nobody out here embezzled $4 million. No, you must do it. And I said, well, let me ask you this. You want these people, the staff, the employees to take an 8-hour ethics course. How long was the ethics course that the executive team took? Was it 20 minutes? Was it 30 minutes? Yeah, about 20 minutes. So the actually people who needed the ethics course didn't get it. And finally, with a lack of accountability, right? I'm above this nature of it. I came into work for another big retail company. They had just finished their employee engagement survey. And on this survey, the lowest indice from the employees was trust and communication in and with the executive team. So by the time I got there, they came up with the solution. My solution recommendation would have been, hey, how can you guys work better as a team? How can you communicate, be more transparent? Can you look at yourselves and see what you could do better? But what do you think they came up with? Did they look at themselves? No. They come up with a $2.1 million culture program for everybody else to take because they weren't really good at trustworthy and good at transparency and communication. So instead of looking at themselves, they looked at everybody else to give the apparent parents that they were actually doing something. And that's really the problem with CEOs right now. Okay, there's a lot of them that kind of fit this bill. Now, again, not all CEOs are bad. Not all CEOs are bad people, but there are a lot out there that aren't very good and that need to be changed out. So the solutions to this, for me, I didn't have any. It's a big issue, but I think the people, the workers are speaking now and being very choosy about who they work for and for whom they work for. And I would tell you, wherever I was, I wanted to know the CEO because I wanted to know who I was busting my butt for. That was important to me. And if I felt they were a good person and cared about people, I didn't mind working for them. But I felt something else was going on. I didn't feel so good and I left. So the solution, though, then becomes this. One, if you ever become a CEO, be a good CEO, okay? Take the lumps, learn what you need to learn, not by manipulating the system, not by playing the game, but by being a good leader. Eventually, you will get there. Also, we got to expect more from our board of directors of these companies. They're way too connected to each other. They have to do a better job. How many times have you heard of a CEO really running a company into the ground and yet keeping their job, or if they are asked to leave, they get a $25 million severance, right? It's insane to me. And then you wonder why people don't want to go to work anymore or feel workplace is toxic. Remember, everything starts at the top and goes and runs downhill. Or as my Italian mama would say, the fish rots from the head down. Okay, other solutions. Again, we hit to stop working for people that you don't want to work for, who are good at speaking leadership, but not really good at living it, for sure. Also, we need to increase accountability overall with the executives and be much transparent about their pay and their results. Recently, there was a CEO who just made some really bad business decisions, and his response was, well, we tried that, and that didn't work, so we'll try this. And the CEO is making $45 million a year. I'm pretty sure if I did that when I was a junior employee and I said, well, I didn't really do that great, but I tried my best, I'll try better next year, I would have lost my job. So we need to work on that. Also, again, and this is a call already, we need to increase transparency in organizations. And I think overall, employees have to demand better workplaces, better leadership from their CEOs. Or they need to go work for themselves. Or for the small businesses, which actually has less of these problems. Small businesses are great to work with and work for. for sure. So that's it. If you have any ideas how we beat this problem, I don't know. So write me. And if you disagree, tell me. If you're a CEO who's mad at me because I exposed you, I'd love to hear from you because I've executive coached a lot of you. I know your ins and outs. I'll leave you on this story. It's a beautiful story. There was this senior HR vice president at a pharmaceutical company that I really liked. And he was quiet, but really competent, really good fella. And when he retired after 30 some years, they said, well, what do you want for your retirement? And he said, we'll give you a big banquet. We'll send you a vacation. He's like, no, I just want to address the entire HR employees across the company. It was a very large company. So this would have been a few hundred people. And that's all I want. I just want to address them. And so at his address, he shared really good stories about himself, gave a lot of good wise and smart advice to us. But the last story I'll never forget. He said when he first came onto the company, he was a very junior HR person. But he was at headquarters. And at headquarters, because the CEO at that time was a great guy. He ate lunch with the workers. He remembered people's birthdays. He shook hands, just in touch with the people. He would show up at the manufacturing plants and cheer them on. And it was just great, And then unfortunately he passed, I think a couple of years after he worked there, after, this HR person worked there. And he never will forget the funeral. And the funeral was big because the church was packed. There was layers and layers of people outside the church just paying the respects to this man. And then they hired a new CEO who was the opposite, who really liked the power and the prestige, who would only show up in a limo, smoking cigars, not talk to anybody, who made a separate wing in the dining hall so he and the executives would eat by themselves, never cared about anybody's birthday, just did his thing, and try to make money for the company. And his tenure was short because he also passed. He passed. And at this point, this HR leader had to find pallbearers for this man's funeral. And he couldn't. He looked and looked and ultimately had to pay people to carry the coffin down the church. So, this is a notice for CEOs to do the right thing, to do better. And we as people, if we become CEOs, we need to do better too. We need to demand better from our CEOs. So I share this with you guys because I want you to have great work lives. And I want you to know who you work for. And I want you to demand excellence in leadership. I want to expose how it really works so we can give a name to it, so we can do better in the future. Thank you very much.